Well, hello YouTube, it's me Fortmaster, and welcome back to another Half-Bred Chaos reaction. And this is, why does Deltarune have an element system? Which, I'm gonna be completely honest here, that's news to me. I had no idea, Deltarune even had an element system at all. So, the question of why is definitely up there. Honestly, the only things I really know of like, elements, quote-unquote, was, Noelle's ice. And again, I thought that was just, naming. I didn't think there was actually like an element component to the attacks themselves. So, I suppose we should probably get into the question of why then from, Half-Bred Chaos here. So, yeah, of course, as always, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video link to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, with all that being said, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Howdy. You know what I've been dying to talk about since one of my very first videos? Why the heck does Deltarune contain an element system? Seriously, I don't get it. Why go through the effort to include this? Is it going to be important?
Oh, wait a second. Element heart ice. See, I never noticed that before.
Seriously, I don't get it. Why go through the effort to include this? Is it going to be important later? Well, we need to understand the element system to make sure our attacks are super effective. When Omega Icy Neo starts rapidly shuffling between elements,
no, Omega Icy,
why the
not
heck
again.
is spammed in a cat? Sorry about that. If you're new
I'm sorry,
here
what?
and have no idea what I'm talking about, starting in Chapter 2 of Deltarune,
Yeah,
whenever
no
you visit
idea.
one of these save points, you have the option to check your recruits, which, amongst other things, will display the element of each of the enemies you've managed to befriend. While at first this might appear to be just some silly bit of flavor text, these elements do correspond to actual armor, which can be used to reduce the amount of damage you take from incoming bullets. I already did a pretty thorough video covering Element 6 and how, by wearing the mannequin or the frayed bow tie, one can acquire a defense against cats, which will allow you to take less damage against Task Manager and, for some reason, Spamton Neo. But what about the other elements?
Spamton's element is cat? Okay. And here I thought, when they started talking about elements, it would be something simple like fire, water, ground, air. But no, we got puzzle, cat, ice. Okay, what were the other ones I didn't actually see?
Is there anything we can learn about the characters, the world, or the future of the story from taking a closer look at them? Well, let's dive in and find out.
I'm gonna have to watch what is
Before we
Element
get
6
started,
after this, aren't I?
spoilers for Undertale and Deltarune. Don't hassle people for using text-to-speech, and be nice to your fellow theorists when you disagree in the comments. At first, I thought researching this video would be super easy. I'd just go into the code, open up the list of elements, and report on my findings. But when I opened up the code that's not very helpful, is it?
Oh,
It seems
it's
like
literally
instead
empty.
of assigning each enemy an elemental value, Toby actually assigns them to the enemy's bullets. The elements we see listed in the recruit table are actually just strings added in, one at a time, for each individual enemy. So even though we can use this to assign the element names to the enemies, we can't use this to learn which element corresponds to which elemental number. Curses. Well, maybe we can work backwards? We do know from the armor info that element 1 is holy/electric, element 6 is cat, and element 7 is mouse, so there must be some code somewhere keeping track of which is which, right?
Okay, so again, I thought it was 6 elements. It's 7? How many elements are there?
Beauties and gentle beauties, friends beyond the bounds of conventional attraction, may I present to you the elemental damage reduction script. That's right, folks. While we may not have the list of every element, we do have the script describing how that damage is reduced by your armor. So let's go ahead and see what secrets we can pry from this bad boy, shall we? To begin with, here at the bottom is a line of code that caps the elemental defense so that no combination of armor can reduce the elemental damage by more than 75%. That is to say, bullets will still do at least 1/4 of their overall damage. So, even if you manage to find
Drat. That would have been so cool if you, like, as some sort of, like, special thing, like, you could have the armor bonus be so low that the attacks actually heal you. Oh, that'd be so broken, but it'd be so funny. Oh, actually, if that was such a thing, you'd have to imagine that there'd be some sort of special, like, cutscene that would play if that actually happened.
some sort of Devil's Ring of 50% chaos protection. You won't be able to equip 2 and then stand in a rainstorm of chaos bombs. I mean, you will, but not for very long. But we're here for the elements themselves, right? So does this script tell us anything about those? Let's see. Starting off the list, we have element 0. These bullets are completely exempt from elemental defense, so we can go ahead and think of them as element piercers or non-elemental damage.
Okay,
Tempting though it may be to think of these as the default element, I do actually see the script going out of its way to set the overworld bullets to this element, so it seems like Toby doesn't want players to use armors as a method of cheesing the overworld bullets, which I think might be a bit worrying to players who spent a lot of time dying on the teacups in Chapter 2.
Brings back a whole lot of... Well, specifically, it was the teacup ride when you're trying to get the Spanton Neo fight. Those ones were absolute murder on me.
The other elements work about how you'd expect. Element 1 bullets are reduced by Element 1 armor, such as the Sky Mantle. Element 2 corresponds to Element 2. But, hello, what is this I see? If the item's element is set to 9, reduce damage from elements to an 8? Okay, so element 9 is actually special because it provides the protection of 3 different types of armor simultaneously. That's awesome. I'm a little surprised, to be honest, because in Undertale, 9 was a number that was strongly associated with power, determination, and with the first fallen human.
Well, I mean, I guess in that case, that does make sense. I mean, you know, overwhelming power also allows you, unless you're like some sort of glass cannon, to also reduce damage as well.
So this kind of makes me wonder what elements 2 and 8 are. Please don't let element 8 be spiders. Actually, in the check data, 8 is used for both Toriel and Asgore, so I wouldn't be shocked if it turned out to be the slot for fire. As for 2, up there are way too many 2s. Wait. Nope, not touching that one.
Oh no.
Finally, we get to element 10, which is very special because it protects against everything. Cats, mice, holy. No matter what element the game throws at you, element 10 has got your back. If this game ends up having a 10 armor equivalent, I'd be shocked if it didn't turn out to be using element 10. And
okay,
if
there you go.
Dreams turn out to have an element, I'd bet you anything this will be the element for it. But before you get too excited strapping on your ethereal armor, do remember that element 0 will still pierce element 10's defenses, so you will still die to the teacups. And there we go. We now know that there will be at least 11 element types. Element 9 will protect against 2, 8, and 9. Element 10 will protect against everything. And element 0 will pierce through everything. So
again, 11 elements. God, that is too many elements. And I mean, this is coming from somebody who lives in a world with, actually, how many elements are there? 118, yeah. In the video game, more than like 6 is way too much.
So, is there any way we can use this info to deduce which elements correspond to which numbers? Maybe, maybe not. The thing about trying to do that is, with only 2 chapters out, we are missing so much information it makes my head spin. To begin with, how many elements are there per slot?
I've said that so many times before. Like, we're not even dealing with a game that's like halfway through. We're like just over a quarter of the way through. So like we are missing so much.
Is it 1 per slot with Holy/Electric being an outlier, which generally covers the sky element? Or is it 2? If it is 2, which element pairs with mouse in slot 7 and cat in slot 6?
Cat and dog, mouse and rat? I don't know. Who knows, maybe in chapter 3 we'll, like, maybe Toriel has rats in her walls that she didn't know about.
Is 6 also sound strings? Cosmic horror? Wait, I don't think there's a radical for cosmic horror yet. Is it rude? Is rude even an element? We know that Susie's Rude Buster does Rude-type damage, and that other party members such as Noelle can use Ice-type damage, which does correspond with a known element held by one of the enemies. But we don't actually know what that means yet, since that could actually just be foreshadowing of Noelle becoming an enemy or a boss fight later on in one of the chapters. Which might be a problem if we taught her Snowgrave now that I think of it. Oops. Then again, what about Red Buster? Would this count as a color-type attack? There's really no way to be sure. I don't see any code suggesting that our spells have elements assigned to their attacks, but that doesn't mean Toby won't add it in later. This is the challenge with speculating about a game that isn't complete yet. Toby could literally retcon just about any component of this game at any moment, and even if he doesn't, we're still missing too much data to really be certain about any of these. For example, consider Rabbit. They're Dust Rabbit type, but as of the time of this video, they are the only enemy with either Dust or Rabbit as a type. So if I start analyzing the heck out of their personality and behaviors, how can I be sure which traits are Rabbit and which ones are Dust? Or what about enemies that have multiples of the same element, like Jevil and Mouse Wheel? Is Mouse Wheel more mouse than a normal mouse?
Well, considering it's made out of multiple mice, I would assume so.
Like, should I assume that one of the attributes of the mouse element is spinning in circles? Or is spinning just what happens when we shove multiple copies of an element into one person? After all, our other example, Jevil, is also spinning. Wait a flipping second. What the heck is that? Every element in Japanese has one radical per element, and I thought maybe Jevil would be the exception, because he spells chaos out in full, but no, it can't be. Wait, maybe I'm in the wrong place. Am I reading this script wrong? Let's see. Just gotta recruit Jevil, boot it up in Japanese, and, oh my god. A beauty is joying in my heart right now. They should have sent a poet. Silly me. What was I thinking? Assuming Jevil would be bound by the conventions of the character limits or the size of the slot.
Of course. So, okay, I'm a bit lost right now. Halfbreed, can you explain your thinking? I'm kind of like, I'm in a fog right now.
Don't I know that Jevil can do anything? I mean, his cell isn't resting within the boundaries either, so I'm not sure why I'm surprised. Sorry, what was I talking about? Doubling up on elements?
Why do Holy and Electric share a slot?
Right. If there are exactly 2 elements per slot, should we assume it's the result of elements being, in some way, the same? Or is this the result of elements being opposites? Our only real example, Holy Electric, doesn't really give us much to go on one way or the other.
Yeah, because, like, I mean, granted, from everything I've seen, you know, electricity is not really the opposite of holy. I mean, given that, you know, lightning usually comes from the sky, they're kind of synonymous a lot of the time.
Since we have yet to see any monsters with holy as their element, unless you count Birdly Witch. I mean, you could, but that's even riskier than Rabbit, because Birdly could have multiple
holy
elements and we'd never even know. So, what then? Am I saying there's nothing we can learn by examining the elements right now? Well, no, I don't think that's true. I do think Toby has left us some clues regarding some of this stuff. To begin with, let's look at order, because we actually have 3 pretty solid examples of the element. We have Pawnman, Task Manager, and Ambulance. Since Pawnman is the only of the 3 that's pure order, I think it's probably the best place to start. Pawnmen are the pawns on the chessboard.
Yeah.
A pawn, symbolically speaking, refers to someone who is allowing themselves to be controlled by another. This is a sentiment reinforced by the dialogue, as the other pieces around them describe pawnmen as having no will of their own and being easy to control. This is also seen in the pawnmen themselves, who are described as listening politely, despite having no ears.
Oh god, I love the writing in these games. It's absolutely beautiful.
These are sentiments reinforced by Task Manager, who commands the player to act in a way that is refined and obedient, literally whipping us into shape. You might think Ambulance is the outlier here, because it's a play on the word ambulance, and seems to reference a lot of hospital imagery, but that seems to be due to the electric part of their element. On the order side, they act as antiviral programs that round up viruses, and there is a lot of flavor text in both the game and the code that compares them to police officers who would fit the theme of order.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We can paint a pretty consistent picture of the order element, but when we try to imagine which element might be paired with it, then we start to run into trouble. Why? Well, let's consider rude again. If order includes the aspect of politeness and obedience, then surely rude would be its opposite, right? Makes sense to me, but if rude pairs with order, then what about chaos? Chaos is the opposite of order on a very literal sense, since chaos refers to disorder, unpredictability, and disorganization. But then, wouldn't it make more sense to pair chaos up with rude? After all, most of Jevil's dialogue and items seem to imply a certain affinity for Suzy. But if chaos is disorder, then couldn't we also just as easily pair it up with order, and refer to this as the element of entropy?
Yeah, well, I mean, at the same time, I mean, for all his weirdness, I mean, Jebel wasn't actually that rude. I mean, again, very weird, but I mean, he was rather polite. I mean, apart from the whole, attacking us.
If you think that's a stretch, consider this line from Toby Fox himself during the Jevil fight of the Undertale 6th anniversary Jevil stream.
The pirouette move follows a specific order. If you count the turns, you can get good effects. It only appears random. All chaos is ordered.
Here Toby directly links the idea that chaos and order are actually one and the same, and that chaos is merely order that isn't understood yet. In fact, when you look closer at this fight, you'll find that that's not just true of Pirouette. That's true of the entire Jevil fight. All of his moves begin by following a specific pattern dedicated by the phase, and they only become random if he fails to advance to the next phase before he exhausts the order. There's also a link between Jevil and the Ponmen in the way that we pacify them, as these are the only enemies that seem to use the word hypnotize to describe the way they regard us. So then, chaos should be part of the order element? Or do all three of these elements go together? Can one slot contain 3 elements, or even 4? Which numbered element does this even fall under?
I mean, I've said it before, but like, I am no expert on Deltarune and Undertale's like behind the scenes like mechanics and stuff like that. But I generally like and it might just be my whole thinking of elements being very, like Pokemon based, like fire is weak to water, water is weak to grass, all that sort of deal. So now that we're dealing with stuff like this, with abstract concepts such as order, chaos, and just being rude as elements, along with stuff like mice and cat, I am so confused right now. Like, again, I'm definitely gonna, because I know there's 2 other like element videos Half-Bred Chaos has done. Of course there's the what is element 6 and why is Spamton cat, and then there's another one, puppets, cats, elements revealed in the Deltarune sweepstakes. So
As if that's not confusing enough, I've had some commenters suggest that Spamton's element 6, should overlap with Order, since he and Task Manager are the only enemies in the game to reference Jevil specifically in battle, and I do see where this logic stems from, as in battle we do see other examples of this. For example, Virakun and Ambulance don't seem to do very well on a team, and Mouse, when paired with the task, laments it is not too thrilled about the situation, but that it will work with whoever it has to. But I'm not so sure this is caused by the elements, and to explain why.
It's literally a cat and a mouse and a virus and an antivirus program. So you're literally dealing with diametric opposites there.
I'd like to present the cafe. Here you can pair characters up at the southern table and see unique dialogue between certain character interactions. So if you seat Hathy and Head Hathy together, for example, they seem to enjoy each other's company. At first that might seem like evidence for elements influencing relationships, since they're both heart. But the moment you dig a bit deeper, that theory starts to fall apart. Most pairings based on like elements don't seem to have any effect at all. So if we pair Mouse up with Jigsaw, for example, we don't see any sort of kinship between them, even though they are both mouse type. Same for Virakun and Pop-Up. You'd think since they are both virus type they'd have some sort of unique interaction, but the dialogue remains completely unchanged. For Task and Mouse, there is a new line here, because cats chase mice, but there isn't any sort of dialogue for pairing Task up with Mouse Whale, or Jigsaw, or any other mouse-type creature. Same for Head Hathy and Werewire. She enjoys their company, but not that of a normal Werewire, nor a Bloxer, nor any other fight nor electric-type enemy. By and large, it seems like character relationships are defined by the personalities and experiences of the individuals, and not their elemental alignment. So as a general rule, I'd caution against using their personal relationships as evidence for or against certain elements.
Oh god, yeah, this is what happens when you break stuff. Oh no.
That said, I do think we can learn more about individual elements by comparing enemies of overlapping types against each other, like I did earlier. And while I'm not going to go over every single case because some of them lack information, I would like to highlight a few of the more interesting examples. For one, Electric does seem to be pretty consistent so far with the idea of energy, and even though Ambulance isn't described as holy type, It still has cross-type imagery in its attacks and sprites, reinforcing the idea that holy and electric are two sides of the same coin. Jewel seems to be about both shiny things and the concept of greed or avarice. And Fight seems to center its themes around rivalry, antisocialness, and the shape of one's physical body. But you know which two elements I find to be super overlooked? Ice and Blade. In Chapter 1, there are two Darkners that seem to resemble powered-up versions of earlier Darkners. That would be Head Hathi, which is a powered-up version of Hathi, and Rudin Ranger, which is a powered-up version of Rudin. Head Hathi is interesting because she's our only example of ice. That is, until we get Noelle as a party member. And the main thing that separates Head Hathi from Hathi is that she's withdrawn. She's quiet. It seems like she has a bit of a theme of suppressing her emotions and distancing herself from others. In other words, you could say she's a bit cold.
Hi,
Weirdly
Sans.
enough, cold is an actual stat for Noelle, and as it goes up in a Snowgrave run, we actually see her behavior become more and more withdrawn and suppressed. So if Head Hathi is helping us understand how the ice element affects Noelle, could the same thing be intended for the Ranger? Rudin Ranger is our only example of Blade, and I'd find that to be a super intriguing choice of element, because blades are directly associated with the night and with any lightner who chooses to channel their will by plunging a blade into the earth. Rudin Rangers are also referred to as Diamond Knights in the game's code, which might be a coincidence, or it might just be Toby sneaking more foreshadowing into we heard places, because who even knows at this point? What I do find interesting is the way their character design differs from the normal Rangers. To begin with, they have a longer blade, of course, but they also obscure their face with their mask. I can't help but find myself drawing comparisons between them and Chris, a character who also dresses in the garb of a knight, and also obscures their facial expressions, and who also seems partial to carrying around a blade. The check data also emphasizes the red aspect of their design, which is a Power Rangers reference. Yes, but it is worth pointing out that this color is particularly associated with Chris, not only because it's the color of their eyes and soul, but also because of the way they power up Susie's attacks during boss fights, specifically by changing the color of the purple Rude Busters into the red Buster. But I think the most interesting trait the Rudin Rangers seem to share with Chris is their inferiority complex. As when we see them drinking with Rudin in the cafe, the Rudins complain that the Rudin Rangers are constantly trying to one-up them by ordering fancier drinks. Actually, speaking of an inferiority complex, can I just say that this cut dialogue of Raw Say musing about how strong Noelle is with ice magic comes off as super unsettling to me? I'm not sure if it's because Noelle and Raw Say have similar spells, if it's because Raw Say seems to like being extra close to Chris, or if it's because this line seems like another nod to the Snowgrave route. But I dunno. I guess I can't add it to the Raw Say sus pile if Toby cut it. Can I? Oh well.
I mean, you never know, all those thoughts still might be there, they're just kept internally the entire time.
Either way, there are a lot of ties the game draws between Noelle and Chris. From their shared love of chocolate, to their similar-sounding CD bagels, to their status as a pair of young teens longing to be reunited with their older siblings. So if Head Hathi is meant to inform us about Noelle's element, it seems only fitting that Rudin Ranger would be informing us about Chris's blade element as well. If you're one of those theorists looking for fresh evidence that Chris is the knight, then I do think Rudin Ranger poses as a pretty good piece of evidence to strengthen those symbolic connections, although I would like to point out that there is another character with a bit of an inferiority complex, and a vague connection to the color red. Or wait, is that red or orange? Aw crap, it's the Vermilion Trap all over again.
No!
Run. Even if you think the element system won't play a role in the story itself, it seems extremely likely to me that the elements will play progressively larger roles in the secret boss fights. As Jevil is the embodiment of his element, Chaos, Spampton's element can be guarded against via cat armor, and Shalm seems to believe the boss of Chapter 3 will be impossible to defeat without a certain missing mantle. While I do think it's pretty likely that this will eventually be the Sky Mantle, I wouldn't be surprised if this was the chapter that introduced the concept of players using elemental attacks either, so maybe grab yourself a couple of the big ones, just in case we need to forge some kind of holy hook sword to substitute for our MIA holy halberd. It's funny. While everyone else is making bingo cards about their guesses for Chapter 3's plot and characters, I'm making them for the elements and their numbers. I don't think I can definitively pin any of them without devolving into tinfoil hat levels of confirmation bias-fueled guess.
Have we not been already?
work, but there is one I think I can take a stab at, because it shows up in both Undertale and Deltarune. You ready for this? If we go into the monster data for Undertale, there's a certain amalgamate associated with the cold. This is Snowdrake's mom, and if you've ever played the Snowgrave route before, you might find her monster ID number of 55 to be a bit chilling. What? You think it's just a rounding error when Noelle's HP drops to 55, and not Toby sneaking the word love in through Roman numerals? I dunno, pal. At this point he did it twice, so I guess I'll have to leave that debate for the comments.
You know, it's stuff like this. It really makes me wonder, because, like, of course, you know, these are video games. They take years to make. Stuff like this, I really have to wonder, like, how much of this is intentional? How much is like, forethought? How much of this is just red herrings to drive theorists nuts? Because this whole 55 thing around Noelle and Ice and stuff like that, going all the way back to even Undertale if you include Snowdrake's mom. It's nuts. It really is.
What do you guys think? Does Toby keep sneaking 55 into these characters on purpose? Or is this just a weird coincidence? Should chaos be paired with order? Are we rude? Is rude even an element? Let me know your thoughts down below, because honestly, there's a lot of weird elements in here, and I'm sure there are little hints and secrets about them that I missed. Special thanks to Claire Puppy Love for all the help with translations, to Sergio, Whackbite, Alexander, Space Core, and everyone else who helped my tiny non-coder frogget brain figure out how to read this code while I was melting from last week's catastrophe. Thank you as well to all of my generous supporters on Patreon, and to my new assistant audio editors, Marlon Hedigani X, and
String,
who will definitely not go rogue and mess with my audio. And all of you for your continuous patience and positivity down below. And until next time.
don't forget.
Honestly, this whole thing, it is the whole, like, again, like, the element system is so complex, terrifyingly so to me. But also, against the whole thing where, like, we're not dealing with a whole deck here. Like, again, not just over a quarter of the way through. There are so many missing pieces. Why? Oh, God. So, yeah, that's going to be it for now. I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.